what is it that you really want? Success may be just having a peaceful day.
Good day, listeners. This is CJ Miller, your host of the Spiritual Artist Podcast. I have a great guest today. I think almost the more I talk to her, the more I think we're just, twins separated at birth. So I'm going to introduce you to Sharon J. Burton. She is an artist, an art curator, a poet, a teaching artist, a yoga nidra guide, a certified creativity coach, and founder of Spark Your Creative, based in the Washington, D.C. area. What's so exciting about Sharon is she recently had me on her podcast. So she is the host of Spark Your Creative podcast. I encourage you to go on there and follow it, which features artists and other creatives who are using their unique talents to create more mindful communities in a safer world. Who does that sound like to you? So she is definitely my twin sister, and she is introducing a new book that we're going to talk about in this interview. So good morning, Sharon. How are you?
Good morning. I am so happy to be able to be a guest on your show and to be here today. And yes, when I've gotten to know Chris, I'd say in the last 3 to 6 months, and been following him. Oh no, I think since late last year when we kind of connected.
Yeah, I couldn't remember where we connected. It's so funny.
Yeah, because I think either you sent me a note or I sent you a note. We did a DM on, Instagram, and we instantly said, "You gotta be on my podcast." We had to be on each other's podcast. So, ever since then, every time I talk to this guy, you know, I believe in, and I might have mentioned it when we had our interview, but I believe in, soul family where they're not necessarily your, I don't know, your family of origin, they don't share the same DNA, but they're part of a cosmic or a spiritual family. And I really believe that about Chris. And I think that's why we just sort of gel so well. And we were just talking outside before we started about his upcoming retreats and his last retreat and how fun it was. And I'm sitting here trying to figure out if I can swing a trip
Oh, I would love you to
in the
come,
fall.
yes.
In the fall or next year to go because those folks, yeah, I was looking at his Instagram feed and they just looked like they were having so much fun. And I was like, that sounds like something I would like to do. So anyway, but yes, we have a mutual admiration society and very happy to be here.
Well, it's funny, Sharon. I think we started talking before this call, and I was going to tell you something, and I didn't even get to it because we have so much that's in common. But what I was going to tell you is, as I've done the retreats, I've brought in, I'm attracting teachers also, and so what's helping me is I have people coming that will do a pop-up teach moment. Like I'm teaching my concepts, but then they'll jump in and teach, a specific concept. Like Crystal showed us how to dye tissue paper for collage work. Like, and
Oh,
so,
I would have
and
picked that. I would have liked
I
that.
know, I
As
know.
a
So,
collage artist, yeah, I would
oh,
have.
you
Oh,
would have loved it. She
yeah,
shows you how to take, say you want to have a tissue paper that's very specific color. Like I would call it a Pantone color because I was a graphic designer. But say you want a very specific shade of blue, she
right.
shows you how you dye it, and you lay it on top of, like, I know this sounds weird, a garbage bag, and it dries out, and then you peel it off the garbage bag, and you have this colored, beautiful paper.
Oh, for real though.
Very cool. So, there's always possibilities as we get to know each other more, that and I do more retreats, that I would just bring you in as a
Yeah,
special
I would
guest.
love to do that. I would love to do that, but I also wanna relax and just take it all in too, but I would love to do that. I'm not canceling any opportunities, so universe know that. Anyway.
So let's shine the light on you a little bit here. You have a book that you've just written, and it is available now? Uh,
It will be dropping on May 14th.
May 14th. Okay.
Yes, and I am very excited about it. It's called Creative Sparks: 21 Affirmations and Inspiration for Creativity at Midlife. And this is a special book. I've been at it since 2018 trying to write this book. And it's really been an interesting journey to get to this point. I see it as it's a love letter to Generation X, and and to the
And
boomers too,
everyone, Sharon, I've been
and
reading it,
everyone.
and I've been
Yeah.
going through it, and I'm like, wonder why she said midlife, because the lessons in this book are appropriate for everyone.
Oh, they are, they are. And I aimed this book particularly at, folks at midlife, but as you said, anybody can that has a creative streak or want to, engage in a creative life, can use it, is because a lot of us, as a coach through Spark Your Creative Coaching, I work with a lot of people at midlife. I'm at midlife. I'm in the middle of, let's see, I'll be 56 in almost a month. And what I found is that a lot of people in my generation have been we've either suppressed ourselves or have been suppressed about our creative life. When I was coming out of high school in the mid 80s, no one was encouraging people to do graphic design as much, or maybe graphic design, but not like the arts, going to school to be maybe as a art teacher, maybe, but not so much like if I wanted to go to art school to be an artist, or I wanted to be a musician, or any of those kinds of things. And a lot of people had similar stories that I had where someone kind of discouraged them because that was the 80s. That was a different, it was a kind of a conservative time for our nation. And a lot of emphasis was on what? Business,
Mm.
the sciences, health, law, those kinds of engineering, everybody was being, everybody had to get a bachelor's in business administration or whatever. Everybody was kind of channeled with their masters, get an MBA. MBA was just really, all of those kinds of academic subjects. And, if people were anything like my family was, my parents kind of viewed, the arts as, equating to being broke, equating to not making a living, those old stereotypes of artists. And it just really started. I mean, creativity and all that really just started getting in the millennium, after 2000, maybe a little bit in the 90s, but it really started with this millennial generation. You know, they have really taken the arts to a whole new level, particularly because of the internet and social media and everything. And all of a sudden, people were changing their thoughts about the arts and about pursuing careers in the arts. And now, a lot of young people coming out, that's no longer a taboo thing. That's no longer something that a lot of people would, discourage you from. The
It's
other
funny it's
piece that
funny you
I
say
found.
that. It's funny you say that, Sharon, though, because my son went to a private school here in Dallas, and I found that a lot of these young kids are still being pushed toward non-creative
They
aspects.
are, but there's so much balancing that out,
They try.
They
Yeah.
try, and I think it really depends on where kids are at, but I mean, I have relatives that have gone to art school, that one of them just finished. I have a cousin that just finished art school, and, that just was not, you know
Not going on, huh?
that wasn't going on. The other thing I found is that a lot of people, when they're reaching an age where they're, the empty nest syndrome, some folks are able to retire early. A lot of folks are really going into the arts. And, I'm finding that a lot of people may have a little confidence, but they struggle to get the confidence to create and to show their work and to own the word artist. I mean, I think about myself. I was a late bloomer with art. Though it's in the book you probably read my story where, I was really into the arts and then it just sort of, I got
Yeah.
pushed into this other stuff. And so I had to question whether I was really an artist. You know what I'm saying? It was like, yeah, people liked my art in high school and, I got the indication that I was talented, But after 4 years of undergrad working, then another two and a half, 3 years of grad school, I didn't know whether I was an artist or not, and I had in my head right after I had just finished grad school. That's the interesting thing. I was in my
Mhm.
early 30s, just finished grad school, and I remember just driving in Atlanta. At the time, I was living there and going by the Atlanta School of Art, which is now part of Savannah School of Art, and saying, and I remember like a message, somebody like talking to me, like, okay, now it's time for you to do your art again. And I remember saying, again, art. And then I was worried at that time, I'm going to be this old woman in arts classes. What does that look like? I just finished my professional degree in public administration. Why would I, you know, and it took a number of years for me to get to the point where not only I started taking classes again, but also getting the nerve to exhibit my work. I didn't know what I was doing, but I took a friend to just dare me to do it. So I felt I wanted to do this love letter to my peeps, as they say, to say, look, you can do this. If I can do it, you can do it. But you're right. Anyone who is really looking to have a creative life can benefit from this. But I really want my mid-career folks, midlife folks to know that there is someone out there, voting for you and helping you kind of get past your feelings to move
So
forward.
So let's talk about this for the listeners so they understand how the book is comprised. Because
Mhm.
I admit I have not finished the book because it's a really wonderful book to take you through weeks and weeks. But what it's structured, there's a couple things, Sharon, that I really like about the fact that you kind of tell your personal story in each chapter, and then you go into an affirmation and talk about so you talk about your personal story, practices that you've developed that will help
Mhm.
people through this challenge, and then you go through affirmations. So tell me, why affirmations? How do they work? How does an affirmation work for someone?
That's a good question. Learned about affirmations when I was getting ready to start exhibiting my artwork and really kind of getting into feeling comfortable being an artist. And I started that through Julia Cameron's work, The Artist Way. And that's when I was introduced to affirmations. And, it was weird for me at first, but when you talk about an affirmation, you're talking about something that you may visualize or that you would like to see happen or manifest in your life. But you write it in such a way that it's almost like it's already happened. And even though it may not have, it sort of gears you to think from a perspective of, yeah, this happened. And because it has happened, this is going to give me the energy to move forward. And I talk a little bit about writing affirmations in the early part of the book. But it's also a great way to deal with your inner critic. For example, I might say in my head, I'm not really an artist. I'm not, or my work is crap, you know, or I won't ever get into this exhibition. I'm just not good. I'm this, that, and the other. And the way that I use affirmations and what I share in the book is saying, okay, write yourself an affirmation that changes that language. So, in other words, if you're thinking that your work is crap, is there a way that you can state your art in a different and more positive way? If I think my art is crap, I can say my art is valuable to other people, or my art inspires all those that look at it, or whatever way that you want it to be. And I try to work with people in a sense of, okay, if you take that negative thought and write it in a way that it is affirming for you, as well as it's something that is happening right now. It's not, it's gonna be, or in the future. No, it
Right.
is right now. Because see, gonna be and future stuff may not happen for whatever reason. It also, though it is a good way to set a goal in a sense, it doesn't have the same power as saying it right now. Because when you start shifting your thoughts about your art, your music, your writing, whatever, that creates a different energy in the way that you approach things. And it also gives you a different thought pattern that, well, maybe my work is good, or maybe I can get in. You may or may not get into that exhibition, but it doesn't mean that your art is crap,
Right.
you know?
Right.
It may not be the right exhibition, the right juror that doesn't, appreciate your work. And, a lot of times people just forget, if you got room for maybe 25 to 30 artists for an exhibition and you get 200 people, somebody, they got to find a way to, and a lot of times it's a numbers game. You don't know. I'm getting ready to jury an exhibition in another week or two.
Oh, wow.
And, it's and having jury to show in a couple shows in the past, it's not always easy, you know? And so it doesn't mean that your work was crap. But if you believe that your work is good regardless to what happens, that is going to be one of the things that is going to move you forward. So when you write an affirmation, you're going to write it in a way that is the reality right now, whether you feel like it is or not. And then you work with that affirmation. I encourage people to do things. One of the things I do personally, and I don't think I put it in the book, which I thought was interesting. But anyway, I do morning pages or morning journaling.
Yeah.
And what I do, I pick an affirmation for the day. And usually it's just based on how I want to feel that day or what my intentions are. So before I write anything, I write 7 times an affirmation. I am creative and powerful. My art or my creativity um, is a light of the world, or anything like that that I feel I want to convey and want my energy to embody for the day. And I write it 7 times. I don't know why seven. I just chose that. Maybe because it's a number of completion. I don't know. But it puts me in a different frame of mind when I start writing, because I might start writing about and complaining about something, and morning pages does allow for you to dump, you know, but it doesn't keep me there for long because I put this affirmation up there, and I'm embodying that. Sometimes I say it out loud. Sometimes I don't, but it's just a way to give me a sense of direction for the day, even if I don't feel like it.
So
And
so do you write the same affirmation 7 times, or
yeah,
do you kind of evolve it? Does it change its languaging a little bit as you write it, or is it the same
same
affirmation?
one, same one. Now, it's interesting because the next day or maybe in 2 days, I might see that affirmation again that I wrote, and then I may evolve it
Because
based
'Cause we're always
on
changing,
what has
right?
happened. Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be static, and people can write it. That's just sort of something I do. Um, but I felt it was important because affirmations they're popular. I do a little dive on, um, how they work from a mental health and emotional perspective, so people can get a sense of that, and cite a few research on it, because I know a lot of people are like, well, that's just a number mumble jumble, all you woo woo people get into it. But there is a lot of still, it hasn't been debunked. People still use them, and that means that they have a level of effectiveness, I believe, to help you move forward. Yes.
So I think what I love about this is as we grow, we develop skill sets that help us. And it sounds like affirmations have really helped you as you've
Yeah,
developed being an artist. And so you
absolutely.
want to share them with people. And and
Yeah.
I and I want to share something. I want to confirm, repeat that to the listeners. I know it's in your book. It has to be in
Mhm.
present tense, right? It can't be like
Presence.
I will be at
I
peace.
know, and I think that's what makes some people are challenged by affirmations, because it feels awkward in the beginning, because you're not feeling it.
Mm.
There are days that I'm like, yeah, right. But and that's one of the reasons why I write it repeatedly, because it sort of kinda gets into my brain for that day. The other thing I suggest in a few of the chapters is, putting them out where you can see them. Especially if you're dealing with inner critic or imposter syndrome, where you're just, I'm not really an artist. I'm not, I'm just a joke. People think I'm a joke, blah, blah, blah. I encourage people to write out affirmations of the opposite and put them like in your art studio, put them in places that you create to remind yourself. I mean, I did an affirmation on writing the book. I felt like an imposter throughout the whole time. I was like, "Now how am I gonna, nobody knows me, blah, blah, blah," but I put a few affirmations right where I could see them when especially when I started writing, to help me kind of get into a better mode and say, you are a prolific writer. You're spreading, light and love and creativity to people that need it, you know? And
Right.
so when I would see that, it would just sort of kind of nudge me to like, okay, get going on this. And that's what
Y
worked for me.
and you know what? My experience with affirmations is sometimes when they're big for you, they take it's not just a day, they can take a year to you and I agree with you. I usually tape it on my mirror. I taped
Yep.
it like an affirmation. In fact, I'm working on I am a financially abundant artist and spiritual teacher.
Yes, yes, yes. I love it. I love it.
You know,
Yes,
so
and
I s
it's and it doesn't have to be, of course, we're talking about creative blocks and things there, but yeah, affirm what you want to be, because it's sort of like, and I might have the wrong terminology for this, but I'm gonna use it anyway. It's like a Jedi mind trick. If you focus all on the negative,
Right.
it's easy to focus on it. Humans tend to think on a negative. We're just sort of defaulted at that. And that's why it's always such a difficult thing, because it's easier to say, well, I'm not really this, or, I'm a broke artist, or, I can't even do this. I can't, and yeah, and yes, it's much more challenging in some ways, the way the economy is right now and everything else. But it's not impossible, because what? There's always someone doing it. And a lot of times with less than what you have, you do the best that you can, and you do better when you can do better, right? So it's no, it's not a magic pill. There's sometimes, and I talk about this in the intro and everything else. Sometimes what blocks us or keeps us from being thriving creative people may be, beyond just writing an affirmation. And, I encourage people to do what they can to deal with those issues. But for the most parts, it's just really thinking more positively, and also, finding unique ways to get, to get affirmation for what you do.
Yeah,
So,
I noticed
but
that in the book that you actually say you're very clear about that. You say, "Look, I'm not saying that just an affirmation is gonna totally turn your life around.
absolutely,
There's other
because
things. You
people
have to
are
walk the talk. You have to walk the talk. You have to
yeah,
make changes. You have to" right?
yes, and sometimes you have to get professional help,
Yeah.
depending on what's going on. I mean, and that's real. And for anyone thinking, "Oh, this is not a magic," no, it's not a magic bullet. This is just a tool as part of all the arsenal that you have to become a thriving creative person. Is not the end all be all, but it's a tool that, people have written about it before for creativity. It's nothing new. I'm just putting it in a different format where I give you a suggested affirmation, which serves as a guide to writing your own. So when you see the titles, each of the titles are based on an affirmation I created. So you look at that title and you see everything is in present tense, and that gives you a clue on how to write one for yourself. You can even use the one that's in the chapter. I don't get caught up in, oh, I don't want to use the one, but if that one really speaks to you, use that. You know what I'm saying? It's just, a way for you to understand how that affirmation applies to what you're dealing with as a creative person, and, helping you to think through, well, what kind of affirmation could I write? Because even though that's provided for you, I know that for me, it's much more powerful when I write it myself. And you may have to do it a couple times to get it the way that, you know, because I think for me, it's like a feeling. If I get this feeling like, yes, that's what I want to have happen. You know, but it took
Right.
me a while
I
because I
remember I don't did you read
remember
it? I'm sure you've read Abraham Hicks or listened to Abraham Hicks,
yes,
and I love how she says, "It has to be believable. You can't jump too far down." Like, I can't sit there and go,
absolutely.
I'm a millionaire artist," like, that to me, that resists me, but I can be a financially successful. You see, I can,
Yeah,
right? And so picking your affirmations, it's pushing you ahead, but if it's too far ahead, it might not
yeah.
work.
If you are not a Beyonce, all right, you know, um, not everybody can get a record deal. It's just not in the cards for everybody. There's a lot of talented singers, but it may not be. But one of the things I always talk to my clients about too is redefining what you feel success is because, you know, the world will tell us success is Beyonce or Taylor Swift or showing up like that's success. But when you really get down to what success is, it's much more personal than that. A lot of times it's just being able to be at peace every day without having to deal with worrying about making sure certain bills are paid or worrying about safety, getting home and worrying about my kids or worrying about my job or those kinds of things. And when you think more closely as to, okay, what is it that you really want? Success may be just having a peaceful day, and that doesn't mean that it's not, some people say, well, it's not big enough and blah, blah, blah. No, it doesn't have to be, but you can use that as, the first level of what you want. When you think about the hierarchy of needs, when you think about what is success to me is being able to take care of all my bills so I can go travel or I want to be able to retire successfully. I don't have to be a millionaire, but I want to be comfortable. you know what does that look like for me, and what do I need to do to be to that level? I've always wanted to be a musician, a songwriter, a
Okay.
producer, all that's my fantasy thing, right? I wanted to be Ann Wilson of art. That's
Is
who I
that
wanted.
all?
Oh yeah, that I ever since I was in high in pre I was a preteen, I loved art. Okay. The other group I liked was Taste of Honey. They did the
Oh,
more the
yeah. I love
but
Taste of Honey. But you know what? I love how you said that. You have to define what success is to you. And
yes.
and I wanna go back to that. One of the things you had I wanna share this with the listeners. What's really great is and this does apply to someone going through a midlife, recognition of being an artist, is you're dealing with common issues that you have. And in one of these chapters, I love this, you had the example of not getting accepted to a juried show. And you talked
Mhm.
about that a little bit earlier. And you have to define what success is to you. Just the fact that you created the piece of art and submitted it is is a success.
Yes. And one of the things I always try to tell my clients and the folks I coach is through my workshops, find something to celebrate with
Mm,
your creativity. And it doesn't have to be, these are big milestones. If you get into a show that's, highly competitive, of course you want to celebrate that. If you get on the cover of a magazine, or if your writing gets all these accolades, yes, celebrate that. But don't get caught up in waiting for those milestone moments to celebrate. Um, for example, I shared on my Instagram today that, one of the things I celebrate today is doing all I need to do to get my book promoted. But I think that we forget to celebrate ourselves as creatives. We're always looking for outside validation. And we need to look at, okay, I finished a chapter this week. I started a chapter, didn't finish it, but I started one. And
Right.
that's fine. I'm not saying, put everything out there as something to celebrate, but I mean, if you're having a crazy week, maybe you're still working on the job, maybe you're dealing with a caregiving situation, your mom or your dad, or maybe you're dealing with a wayward child, maybe you're dealing with some other drama in the home, maybe you're in between locations, and you were able to get a small piece done. Yes, celebrate that. And when you really make some things happen, don't wait for somebody to just celebrate you and take you out to dinner and, oh, you did it. Like with the book, trying to put together something that is going to celebrate that for me, having actually published something. It may not be right that day, on the 14th, but it's going to happen. Maybe it's a trip somewhere, maybe it's a spa day, whatever I feel I want to do to celebrate that, because that's important. It's more important than reviews or podcast interviews or anything like that. It's important that I recognize myself, that I've accomplished something.
It is,
So
and, you've accomplished a lot. I share this with the listeners after I wrote my book. It's a wonderful experience. It doesn't matter if it sells or not. It's processing your thoughts, right? And putting them
mhm,
in order and starting to realize this is how I work. This is how I think. I'm sure you've grown so much, right? Just by
I have.
clarifying. So it's like a self-reflection.
Yeah, because a lot of these in the book were blogs. So I had been writing all along. And when I thought about the book, I said, well, you've been writing all this. Why don't you just compile it into something that's, and then, so that helped me, it's my words. So it in my thought patterns, yeah, I did a little research,
Mhm.
to support what I'm saying, because I don't, we all can say what we feel, but if it,
I know it.
I still believe in science.
Oh, you
But
do? How fresh.
I still believe it. Um, but and that's my public health background I was talking, but, um, you know, I I I had to really, look at that and say, there's a lot, and a lot of people miss those blogs. They may not have read them or knew that I wrote that, and I said, "Okay, well, let's put this out here." Um,
Like,
it
I'm gonna
wasn't
share one. I'm gonna share one with the listeners because
sure.
I love how you talked about that, and I wrote it down in my notes. Uh,
Okay.
Imposter syndrome. That's
Yes.
something you address in there, imposter syndrome. Let's talk about that because you
Yes.
said almost everybody feels that.
Yes. Yes. And one of the things that I try to, and even in the chapter I talk about, is really thinking about, where did that come from? What is what who what how were you made to feel that you're not really a creative person? Where did that come from? Did that come from, and it's very related to the inner critic too, because if you're feeling like, I'm not really a writer. And I felt that almost all the way up to this point, because I was like, I'm not really a writer. I mean, I'm an artist. I coach folks. I don't write, books and stuff. And it was intimidating. And a lot of it was fear. I had to own that. Okay, part of it was fear. Part of it was like, what if people don't like it? Are they going to tell me that I'm not any good? And I had to challenge myself on that. And then I had to challenge on things that might have been said to me. I had a friend, more, well, yeah, she
A
was a friend.
person.
And I remember telling her, concept that I was gonna do for the book, and, everybody else had been really like, "Good, do it," and then it was strange because she just sort of stopped in mid-sentence, and she just sort of was like, "Well, what made you think that you could write a book like that?" And I said, well, life experience, and she said, well, it doesn't seem like it's something you do. See, she didn't really know my background, but I just thought it was like, it was almost like the universe was sort of parroting back my thoughts, like, "What would make you
Yes,
think?" And
exactly.
using her to do it, and I had to step back for a minute because I was like, "Well, what does make me think I could do this?" And I had to work with that, and affirmations was one of them. Yes, I am a writer. I'm a writer that will heal, and strengthen creatives all over the world, something to that effect. But it took me a minute, those
Oh,
things
yeah.
start messing with you. And that sort of feeds into the imposter syndrome. The feeling that I'm not really these things because and sometimes we don't remember who it was. We just know that somehow, and sometimes I challenge people. I always say, when you're dealing with inner critic or that feeling that you're not really a whatever, okay, can you identify the voice in your head? Sometimes it's you, but sometimes it's the person that said something, but you don't think about it or recognize it. And, when you really start thinking about where does it come from or where it could have come from, is that makes it easier to slay it. And again, that's when you come into affirmations. If you can write what you know that you are deep inside and make that affirmative, because it's you are an artist. Even if you haven't picked up a brush since you were 18 years old, you're still an artist. You're still a musician. You're still a writer. It doesn't matter how long you've been separated from it. And yeah, life happens. Life is lifing, as they say these days. And, we can't always get back to it when we want to. But now, when you're at a point in your life where, you became somewhat employable, some of us have, some of us have not, but if you're at a point where you wanna go back to it, you don't have to question that. You don't have to question that you weren't that, if that was something. If you played the flute in high school and you wanna get back to that, you can do it. You're still a musician.
Right. You can't
It
take that away.
doesn't stop because just like you're a human being, that's a part of you. And if that desire and passion is there, yes, you are. You're just not a practicing musician, but you're still a musician nonetheless,
And,
so never question it.
one of the things I realized too is because my mind, you find yourself something to run through your head over and over again. And then I realized it doesn't matter where it came from. It doesn't matter who said it. Go straight to the affirmation, right? Just go
Absolutely.
straight to the truth.
Yeah.
Eh,
But sometimes I do ask people to do that because sometimes they need to understand where that it's usually someplace outside of you,
oh, yeah.
you know. And we go into those things owning it, even as children, but it's always something somewhere outside of you. And it also challenges you to start saying, okay, who am I going to listen to? Am I going to listen to me or am I still going to be chasing validation from
Mm,
outside of me?
that
And
and
is that
that's
keep me from moving forward with what I want to do? No, it doesn't really matter. But at the same time, you need to be clear that you're not the enemy of yourself. You know what I'm saying? It didn't come from you originally.
right.
It came from somewhere else. So befriend yourself. Write who you truly are inside as an affirmation and work with that energy to continue to show up as the creative person that you are.
Yeah, because I was going back to what the guy said. Who says a poem has to go anywhere? I mean, what that's a value judgment right there. Poetry doesn't have to go anywhere. It just tells a story and takes us into a little slip of a moment. It doesn't
It
matter.
And see, I had to come to that conclusion. At the time, it was, it hurt me a little bit. And then and because I was new to writing poetry, I
Right.
kind of was like, but then I
Yeah.
had to sit down and say, okay, Sharon, you had 4 or 5 poems that got published in an anthology by a person who writes poetry all the time. She would not have put that stuff in there if that wasn't right, had been published in a book. Um, I have done spoken word. I've performed it. How can somebody who doesn't write poetry, who probably doesn't read it, how are they going to judge me?
Right. And
And
I
sometimes you have to
I always
put
tell
that.
my students there's always going to be someone if your affirmation is there's always someone that's not going to like you. I know that's weird, but there's always gonna be someone that's not ready for you. Okay, that's not who I'm working with. They're not on my path. Or I always say, that's not on my path. And you focus on all the people that do like you, that you focus.
Yes. I tell people all the time, sometimes, one person I had coached and she was talking about her art and stuff. And I'm like, well, when you post it on Facebook, do you get people that say they like it? Well, yeah, but I said, those are the people you need. I said, matter
Yeah.
of fact, why don't you do a cut and paste of what these people said and put it on a piece of paper and just put it somewhere so you know that people do like your work. Now, they may not be so and so at the local museum or the Smithsonian or,
Mhm.
Art Basel or, any of that. They may not be those people, but you know, get out of your head that people don't like your work because, we take for granted what people say, but people don't usually say things just to say them. If I don't like something, I'll just refrain. You know, if I take time to write something and say, "Go girl, yes, your work is phenomenal." At least from my perspective, I'm going to share that. And I think most people are on that same tip. And if they're lying, but they're saying something positive, and hold on to that. Don't get caught up in other, validation from people that may or may not really matter in the
Mm.
long and short.
Well, I love the book. I'm encouraging my listeners to go out and get it. And I want you to talk about real brief here. We're running out of time, but you
Mhm.
mentioned that there's going to be a promo coming up where they can get it for, what did you say, 99 cents? Oh,
99 cents on, my launch date is
yeah.
May 14th, 2024, and, you can get the, ebook from Kindle, from Amazon for 99 cents that whole day,
Wow.
and I am going to yeah, I'm also going to be doing a launch party where you'll get a chance to meet a couple people that were artists and creatives that were contributors to the book. My publisher, Schweiner Publishing Company, they're gonna be there. I'm gonna read a little bit from the book, just to give people a sense of what it's about and all that. And I'm gonna be giving away some books, some paperbacks, and a little bit of swag and all kinds of little things. So we're going to have fun. That's going to be at 7 o'clock that evening. And that will be broadcast live on the Spark Your Creative Facebook page and on our YouTube page, the Spark Your Creative YouTube page. So there's no excuse. Everybody can, drop in. We'll just have fun and you'll learn more about the book and some of the people that were profiled in the book. And yeah, it's gonna be cool. It's gonna be
Sounds
fun.
great. I'll put that in the notes. Send me that information. I'll add it to your notes. So if you didn't get it when Sharon was just speaking about it, you can actually go to the notes and do this launch party. And wow, I mean, getting all this for 99 cents, you're giving it away, girl.
I know. Just for one day though. Just for one day. Just for one day because
Yeah.
it's a celebration of creativity and embracing your creativity. So, yes, we will be doing that for one day only.
So is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners before we end this call that we haven't covered? There's so much. I mean, there's so much in this book. And
There's
I
so much. The only thing that I will say is that I will be doing some in-person book signings. I wish I could cross the country, but I can't. But I will be doing some in the DC area in June and in possibly August and September. I will be in Durham, North Carolina, the end of September. And I will also be in St. Simon's Island, Georgia, in October as well. And I'll be doing a virtual podcast. Um, well, podcasts are virtual, but I'll be doing more of a virtual video and podcast on the book starting this summer, where I'll be reading from some of the chapters and talking about some of the concepts and may have some of the artists and contributors that will be a part of that. There's a lot going on.
There's something going on. You got a lot of celebrating going on. Well,
Yes,
I
sure.
look forward to, keeping in touch with you and sharing this
Oh,
journey.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like I said, we're very similar, and I love it. Similar but different because everybody's unique, and, I look forward to that, so thank you. Listeners, I wanna encourage you to like this on YouTube and follow my channel for more interviews that are coming up. I wanna encourage you to go and check out Spark Your Creative podcast and where, Sharon interviews other artists. It's very interesting, so there's always more out there to learn and listen to while you're making art. Um, I am having a retreat coming up this fall. You can check it out on spiritualartisttoday.com. And I'm having a really great retreat scheduled for Santa Fe, May next year. And it's going to be fantastic. So check that out. Thanks again for listening to the Spiritual Artist Podcast. Sharon, have a great time and good luck with this. I'm so excited about this book. It's been great.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be a guest on your show.